coffee, the Advent Alphabet book, a Hope of All the Earth CD, and a 10-pack of Isaiah 9:6 stickers, all at a very special price. Get your Christmas bundle today at resources.afa.net.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network on this Monday, November the 27th, 2023. Welcome to the program, and welcome back from Thanksgiving Day weekend. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Vitagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
And Fred Jackson.
Good morning, guys. Welcome back.
Everybody get enough to eat?
Oh, too much.
Yeah, too much. I'm just going to say today I am identifying as skinny. I am trans slender. Because the reality is,
Right,
I'm sure
right.
I gained 3 or 4 pounds.
Right.
It was not a pretty sight.
But you enjoyed it while it was
I
happening.
enjoyed
huh?
it while it lasted.
Well, Thanksgiving weekend is come and gone, and now 3 or 4 days from December, Fred?
Friday is December 1st.
And you know, December is a good month to cut back on food. I really think you can get through Thanksgiving, then everybody in America starts dialing it back.
Yes.
You know,
It's true.
except for December.
Nobody brings food into work or anything.
No, there's sweet.
That's the downfall.
Right.
I guarantee every time from now through January 2nd, every time I walk into the kitchen
Yes.
up there on the top,
Yes.
second floor,
Yes.
there's going to be a box of something sitting on that table.
Free for the taking.
Free for the taking.
Yeah. Brownies, sugar cookies.
That's
Donuts,
why. That's
cake.
why on January 4th, the fitness centers have the biggest capacity crowds
Yep.
ever.
Yeah, they explode their membership. Everybody buys that 6-month membership.
And then by March 4th,
Right,
they go
right.
back down to their normal
Kind
clientele.
of like reading the Bible through for the year.
Yeah, I always have to laugh too. You get to the yard sales in April.
Yeah.
Treadmills are on sale everywhere.
That's right.
You're
Otherwise known
right
as a
about
clothes
that.
hanger. I was like,
my dad, he's still alive today. My dad, he's 85 anyway, has suffers from dementia. That's pretty public knowledge. But anyway, I remember he had a heart attack when he was in his mid-50s. You guys remember that? Were you here?
I don't think
He
so.
had a heart attack in Jackson, Mississippi. He was hospitalized, and the doctor said it was like a 7 on a scale of 10.
Wow.
Pretty serious heart attack. Could have died, but he survived.
Mhm.
But he got but right after that, the doctor recommended you need to start exercising regularly, and watch your diet and everything like that. And so he and Mom bought a treadmill, and put it in the den. In fact, in their house, so you couldn't avoid it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You had to stare at that thing every time you walked through your den.
Yeah.
Okay. He used that thing about 3 weeks.
Right.
Huh? And then it after that, like Fred said, it started collecting dust.
Yeah.
And I don't know whatever happened to it. I don't know. They
Probably a yard sale or given away.
It may be in their garage now. I don't know. I hadn't checked it recently.
Probably
but
still in pretty good working condition.
fairly new.
Barely used.
Barely used. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So we hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving weekend, and onward we go. Fred, back to the real world. We do have the situation in Israel still getting a lot of international attention. What's the latest there?
Yeah, right now it's about 6 o'clock in the evening, I believe, in Israel, 8 hours time difference from where we are. And the last I heard, negotiations were continuing to extend this ceasefire period, which is now in day 4. So we have upwards, and the figures seem to be different depending on what news agency you're quoting, but at least about 50 of the hostages have been released since last Friday. If you look at the pictures, various news agencies, in fact, I just mentioned pictures and up they show on the screen here in front of us. A lot of children, a number of women have been released. Children as young as 4 years of age. There was a 4-year-old yesterday who was released. And they come with sad stories. This little girl, among the hostages released, her mom and dad died in that massacre on October the 7th. She managed to get away because her daddy shielded her. And so she managed to get away, but she was captured, taken hostage. She had I think a brother and a sister, a young brother and sister, who were able to hide in some kind of protected closet that was inside the house where they lived. But what's going on right now, there's a lot of pressure on Israel to extend this ceasefire for another day. What Israel has been saying is that they want the release for every day it is extended. They want the release of another 10 hostages. We understand from early this morning, our time, that the Hamas negotiators in this are bucking at this because they said Israel is still involved with warfare on the West Bank, taking people into custody there. So anyway, as I mentioned, you have this 4-year-old as probably the youngest of the hostages. Her name is Abigail Eden, and Prime Minister Netanyahu was talking about her in reaction to her release last night. Cut number 1.
The little girl, Abigail, what a joy to see her with us. But on the other hand, what a pain that she returns to the reality of no parents. She has no parents, but she has a whole nation that embraces her.
Now, the oldest hostage released, I believe, was an 84-year-old woman. She is said to be in critical condition in hospital. We're starting to get, I guess, from the released hostages, news of what conditions they faced. They indeed confirmed they are being held in tunnels. A lot of these people, for instance, had very difficulty seeing when they were brought to the surface. They said they were fed very minimum food. Someone said cucumbers and a salad or something of that nature.
And pita bread, I think.
Yeah, that kind of thing. They were being kept.
Most of them have lost a fair amount of weight.
15 pounds.
15 pounds.
In that period since October the 7th. So this story is not over yet. There was another, a relative of some of the hostages. Her name is Alana Sidchik. She is an American. She was interviewed on Fox and Friends this morning. She's a relative of 2 young kids that were freed, but she still has 4 other relatives who are still being held hostages. And she had a message for Americans about what their attitude should be towards this. Cut number 2.
I am so appreciative of the support and the calls for the release of all the hostages. It's not only about my family, of course. So, we are so grateful for that. We'd like to continue seeing support for all of the hostage families. It's not going to be a short journey for some of these, especially for the soldiers and for the young men that are there. Like Hirsch, we are all waiting to hear about what will happen to Hirsch. And, I think we just need to continue to, pressure, everyone to continue on this path of releasing the hostages as quickly as possible.
And pressure is a good word right now, because what it seems right now is that Israel is facing a lot of pressure to basically end this. And what does that mean? There's a meeting going on today in Spain involving European representatives and representatives from Qatar and some of these other countries. Qatar very involved with the negotiations on this. And one of the things coming out of the meeting seems to be, okay, we need to end this. There seems to be an agreement that they can't go back to Hamas ruling Gaza. So they're starting to talk about some kind of interim government, and speculation being about a European Union, United Nations type government going in for an interim period in there. So everything is kind of still up in the air. You remember when all this started? Netanyahu was saying, no ceasefire because ceasefire gives Hamas the opportunity to regroup. That fear is still there.
And my understanding is during this ceasefire, not only is there an ongoing swap of hostages for prisoners,
1 to 3,
but there are Israel's also allowing truckloads of supplies and including fuel, which is very needed in Gaza. I am very concerned about whether or not this pressure on Israel will prevent them or will succeed in causing them to stop what they're doing. Because you mentioned there seems to be an understanding that Hamas cannot continue in control of Gaza, but who knows? If they are not completely obliterated, at least their leadership, and forbidden to rule in Gaza, if that's not the outcome here, I don't know that this doesn't happen again 5 years from now.
All right, so what does the word hostages mean?
These hostages are usually innocent civilians who are kept as bargaining chips.
Okay.
So that's different, I think, than what Israel's doing, and that is arresting people suspected of having connections with the terrorist operations of Hamas or soldiers, combatants. I guess combatants can be used, soldiers can be used as hostages, but they are, in essence, a bargaining chip that they can hold back and say, if you do X, Y, or Z, or if you don't do X, Y, or Z, we'll kill them. Yeah. And this has been ancient cultures used to do this to keep the peace.
I guess what I'm saying is when a terrorist organization like Hamas takes hostages, I just can't work it up for me to applaud them for letting some of them go. Like this is a noble act on the part of Hamas.
No, I agree. There's no.
But many in the world are acting like, look at Hamas. They're letting hostages go. These are good people.
No. Wow. Well, those are people that are probably fans of Hamas anyway.
Well, true.
But this is not to be applauded by. Sane people should not be. Fair-minded people.
Yeah, it seems to me Israel has every right to say, you let all the hostages go by Friday, or we're going to resume our military actions against you, and wherever we may choose.
Yeah,
and that is what Netanyahu has said. If they can't come to an agreement in the next few hours to extend this for another ceasefire for another day, he has said they will go back to military operations. But the pressure on Israel to stop. Also, Hamas and the world knows when it comes to Israel, they value lives. In the past, they've given up 1,000 Palestinian prisoners for one soldier. Right now, they're giving up 3 Palestinian prisoners for every hostage that is released. Now, they've released some low-level crime Palestinians, but they've also released some car bombers already. So they're starting to release people who have been held in an Israeli prison for 8 years, as much as 8 years, for terrorist activities. So they're starting to do that, and the fear is, because one of the 1,000 Palestinian prisoners given up there several years ago is a Hamas terrorist that helped organize this October 7th massacre.
Which is why, Tim, to your point, what Hamas did in taking these hostages was in order to get the release of terrorists. Yes. They know that civilized people, which is what I consider the Israelis, civilized people will make those bargains that Fred is just talking about. So they did this in advance.
Because human life is valuable and precious.
To the Israelis.
But to people who put their terrorist operations under hospitals.
Right.
And under mosque, human life is not valuable.
That's right.
So that because they're willing to use their own people as human shields.
Yes.
For their operations, Hamas is. So it's this idea of moral equivalency is just I don't know how you can see that if you come from at least a Western mindset, right?
Right.
A biblical mindset that values each and every human life. The other thing is that I mentioned before many times, war is hell. And if you're going to engage in war, you're often going to be, as much as you may try not to, involved in killing people who are non-combatants, who are innocent civilians.
Right.
That's happened in war since it ever started. But now Israel has tried its best, as I can see, because of their Western values, the Judeo-Christian view of life being precious. They don't, and because they don't want to antagonize the world, who's already sympathizing with the Palestinian Hamas people, is they don't want to just do carpet bombing.
Right.
Okay, which is indiscriminate, basically, against who you're killing. They're trying to use precision. They're trying to go into the tunnels. They're trying to get to the root of who. But when you have a terrorist organization mixing with the general population in a place that has 2 million people, and you got buildings everywhere, and you got families and children everywhere, it's impossible not to have people die who are not combatants. You see what I'm saying? And also, having said that, that's what bothers me when I hear, well, Hamas killed 1,200 people on October 6th, but Israel's killed 10,000 people in response, as if we're supposed to add up deaths on both sides and then keep it equal.
Right.
Huh? No, the reason that Hamas and the people in Gaza, so many have died, unfortunately, is because of the reason I mentioned. It's a very densely populated area, and you got a war going on. So people are going to die. Also, Israel has better defenses than Hamas does. Israel can shoot down rockets so that's to their credit that they keep more Israelis from dying because of their superior defense systems and their superior army. That makes sense?
Yeah. And worldview makes all the difference. You're talking about people with a Judeo-Christian worldview, which teaches that every human life is valuable.
Yes.
But the worldview of Hamas and many Muslims is, first of all, you can kill infidels indiscriminately. And second of all, if people die in the midst of a war against infidels, they're blessed by Allah. So we don't care if our people get killed.
Right.
They go to a better life. So worldview determines how you're going to view the value of human life. And these Hamas operatives and the Brain Trust, they are viewing Israel with those colored glasses. They're saying, we know Israel will make deals for hostages. Mm-hmm. That's why we'll take them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the scary parts of this story, and even if, the conflict ends tomorrow, one of the scary parts is, okay, what are we going to do here in the United States about what we have seen?
Yeah.
On our university campuses, in our high schools. There was a high school in New York's neighborhood of Jamaica, Queens, where students just erupted last week when they found out one of their teachers went to a demonstration in favor of Israel. They went nuts in the classroom. We've seen what's happening on our university campuses. There's been reports of anti-Semitism here and there over the last 10, 15 years, but it exploded in the last month. The degree of hatred for Israel here in America on our university campuses.
I will say this. If we wind up losing the republic, talking about our republic, it is going to be not solely, but in large part due to the Marxist takeover of public education in this country and our colleges and university campuses. Admittedly, the immorality of Hollywood has played a role. Increasingly, the Marxist worldview of many in the corporate world. All that is contributing factors. But I think the largest portion of blame will be this Marxist takeover, because we pay pretty close attention to what's happening in our culture here at American Family Association. That's what we do all day. Even I've been shocked at the absolute hatred of the Jews that we have seen exploding on, not all across the board, I want to make that clear, but in many prestigious college and university campuses, and now even some down to the level of high school. That is a result of brainwashing and propaganda that's gone on for decades.
Well, we even had over 100 professors at Harvard write a letter saying, you know, and defending from the chant of river to the sea.
Yeah.
And we know what that means, the elimination of Israel.
Right.
These are 100 professors at one university, Harvard.
Right.
This is the result of, or a part of, the push for, you call it, well, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. You also call it critical race theory, cultural Marxism. That is the idea, the idea that the colonizers are the ones who are victimizing the rest of the world. And so you have, and the colonizers would basically be the West in general, Europeans, Americans, who had empires in centuries past spread around the world. And then you have those who are being victimized. Is that the way, am I phrasing it correctly?
Yeah.
Is that how they do it?
Yeah, sure.
Those who are being victimized.
Oppressor and oppressed.
And they would include Israel, or Israel, since they're 1948, and the Jews as oppressors. Oppressors. I say victimize, victims and victimizers. Oppressors and those who are doing the oppressing. Those who are doing the oppressing, and this is what's going on, this cultural Marxism that's being promoted all over the country right now in not only colleges and universities, not all of them, but many of them. Also, it's deep down into the high school level. People are being programmed in this way, and have to go through corporate training to be employees of corporations. We hear about this a lot. So this is a real thing that is having real life implications, and it's affecting the American mindset. It hasn't destroyed it yet. I'm talking about, well, by American mindset, I mean the Judeo-Christian worldview, the pro-Western worldview. Capitalism is good. Work is good. Profits is a good thing. Work ethic, the value of each and every human life being important. Fairness, law and order, civil rights, all the Bill of Rights, all these things that promote human freedom and liberty. These are under siege by these, even in our own country and in the West, to try to undermine those values I just mentioned.
Yep.
So that the end game, I guess, would be they take over. They take over the West. They take over these people who believe in cultural Marxism or communism, basically promoted by atheism.
Right.
Even though, in this case, they're being these people who are promoting Hamas. Hamas believes in the radical Islam. They don't believe in atheism.
And none of these people talk about, you want to talk about colonizers. Nobody did more colonizing than Muslims.
Yeah.
Took over entire swaths of civilization.
We'll be back momentarily with more of today's issues. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. Back during the Vietnam War, Alexander Ducat, who was 67 at the time, offered his life in exchange for the freedom of his son. Ducat, from Maryland, told authorities that he was willing to teach in North Vietnam in exchange for the release of his war prisoner son. Ducat smiled, despite the fact that tears were in his eyes when he told reporters of his offer. He offered to organize technical and vocational schools in Hanoi if the North Vietnamese government would free his son, Bruce, who was 29. I've completed a satisfying career and my life is approaching its twilight, Ducat, a former vocational educator, said. Bruce has been a prisoner for 4 years. He has not seen his small daughter since she was an infant. The greatest happiness I could have in the declining years of my life would be to see him reunited with his wife and child. Now, this is not the first story of a father making a supreme sacrifice for his children. Many have been the parents who gave their life that their children might live, even as Mr. Ducat was willing to give his life for his son. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, the greatest sacrifice was made some 2,000 years ago. A father found his children enslaved, hopelessly enslaved. He thought of some way to give them freedom. Then he saw that the only way to set his children free was for him to give himself as ransom for their freedom. And this he did. You see, his children were captives of sin, and in order to free them from their sinfulness, the Father came down in the form of a Son. He dwelt with those living in sin, and he loved them so much and wished that they could be free from their sin so much that he gave his life as a ransom for their freedom from sin. The children did not deserve the gift from the Father. They had not earned it. In fact, they actually had done many things to keep them from ever acquiring it. But while the children were unworthy of the Father's gift, or while they were yet sinners, he died for them because he loved them. But now the children of the Father can have freedom, real freedom, by simply accepting the Father's gift. But because freedom brings responsibilities, many of the children have elected to remain imprisoned. So despite the life-giving gift of the Father, many of his children are still not free because they refuse the gift. You see, the Father will not force his children to accept his gift of freedom. He'll offer, but not force. Mr. Ducat loved his son more than he loved his own life. Mr. Ducat also knew what freedom is, and for what reason he was willing to give up his life for his son's freedom. Perhaps one day those of us who are children of the Father will accept the Father's gift and be free indeed.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
As it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love him. 1 Corinthians 2, verse 9.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Battagliano and Fred Jackson. We ask you to continue to pray for the situation in Israel. Pray for peace. Pray for justice. Pray that the terrorism will be stopped.
Pray for the defeat of evil.
Yes.
Because that's what this other side is.
Yes. So we've been talking about, there have been how many hostages released?
The numbers vary between 55 and 64.
And how many does Hamas hold?
Hamas, well, it still would hold about 180.
180.
Mm-hmm.
That they took hostage on that day, on that October 7th day?
That's correct.
The ones they didn't slaughter, they took hostage.
Right. And that wasn't, these hostages were not accidental. And by that, I mean, they weren't just caught up and then captured. Hamas went looking for hostages to take.
Yes.
Right. Let me ask you this just real quickly. Don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I want to at least tackle this argument that the pro-Hamas, the pro-Palestinian folks put forth. That is, they say Israel is the terrorist organization because they colonized a land belonging to these Arab Palestinian people, and they took over the land, and then they subjugated a lot of the Palestinian people to a small area in Gaza south, and have basically controlled their life existence. And so they deserve to be punished. Israel deserves to be punished for these crimes that they've committed. And so therefore it's just, in a way, what Hamas did. I mean, because they're only fighting back against a real enemy of their own people. How would you respond to that?
Well, there's a number of different answers to it, and I'm going to say something. Then I'm going to let Fred talk about the historic and biblical rights that the Jewish people have to that land. But let me just kind of elaborate on something I just kind of tossed in just before our break, and that is that before Islam erupted out of Arabia, okay,
in what century?
In the sixth and seventh century, they come blowing out of Arabia. They take over, all right, all of North Africa. I mean, this over a period of 100, 150 years or whatever. All of North Africa, which was all Christian, some of the most Christian areas in the world.
Right.
All of North
Even
Africa into Spain, and then heading north, they eventually conquered the Byzantine Eastern Roman Empire, went into Greece and the Balkans, tried to take Vienna, controlled Greece and the Balkans for 400 or 500 years, the Ottoman Turks. Islam swept up east all the way towards India, up into its southern Russia, into Southeast Asia. And in a lot of these places, they most of it, conquered by the sword. And they said, you will become Muslim or else. Overthrew Christian countries. Lebanon in the Middle East used to be a majority Christian country. They are now, with a majority Christian government, they are now run by majority Muslims. The Christians, the historic Christian churches in Iraq have been driven out of their homes. The Christian population in the Middle East, even over the last 30 years, decimated. So when people start talking about colonizers, that is how Islam spread around the world. They conquered the Christian lands of the Middle East. So
and Northern Africa.
And yeah,
and Europe.
But now I'm just talking about Israel.
The Middle East. Okay.
Yeah. So you want to talk about who controls what? All right. Islam took it. That's what triggered the Crusades. I know that was over several centuries. The Crusades started in 1095 when Pope Urban declared that we need to go back and take those lands from the Muslims. So you want to talk about colonizers. It all started with Islam spreading by the sword. So that's one thing I would say is you want to say colonizers got to go? Islam has to leave. All right? If you're not willing to say that, you've got no right to talk about Israel being given its land back. So, Fred, why don't you explain the historic and religious biblical right that Israel has to that land?
In Genesis 15, we have the account of God making his covenant with Abraham. And I'm trying to abbreviate here. What happened was there was an historic way of making covenants back then. You didn't go to a lawyer and sign a contract. You split animals in two, and the two parties walk down between the two separated animals.
We do that at our house. I mean, it's kind of weird for the neighbors. But, we're trying to follow the Bible.
Yes. In this account, God puts Abraham asleep, and God alone walks between the two animals. Now, why did he do that? Because he wasn't going to depend on a human to keep the covenant. God keeps his covenant. But here's what's interesting. And I'm just going to read a few verses from Genesis 17 here so you understand what the original deed of property that God gave to the Jews. When the sun had set, darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared, passed between the two pieces. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham and said, "To your descendants I give this land, from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Canaanites, the Gibeonites, and on all the other ites there." I'll just abbreviate it. So you understand? The original deed went from the Euphrates to the Nile. What is Israel left with today? A postage stamp.
Mm-hmm.
And what do these people who hate Israel are saying? Now they want to get rid of Israel from the river, the Jordan River, not the Euphrates,
right?
The Jordan River to the sea, the Mediterranean
Sea, yeah.
All right? So God gave the Jews this land.
And let's not forget, the reason the Jews were not in what we know of as Israel is because the Roman Empire took them and moved them.
70 A.D.
Yes.
But to your point, Fred, by historic I mean thousands of years relationship of the Jews to the land of Israel, we now know, is undeniable.
Yes.
When we read in the Bible about Jerusalem, it's where the king of Israel was, the king of the Jews.
Yes.
So I mean, they presided and lorded, I say, maybe that's not the right word, over that part of the world for how many, thousands, before the word Palestinian even came into existence.
Right, which was a Roman word, a reference to the region of Palestina. Yeah. And the Romans created that word from the word Philistine.
As an insult.
As an insult to the Jews.
Yes.
So the question is, how far back do we want to go? Because if you want to go, how far back do you want to go? Because we can go back to the beginning of time almost to establish the relationship of the Jews to the land
yes.
that we're talking about here.
Yes.
So,
and Israel, over the years, has been pressured, give up a little bit. Well, give up this. You got to go back 2005. Israel forced the Jewish people out of Gaza because they were told, okay.
Yeah, the Israeli government said, we're getting out. We're going to leave Gaza to themselves.
Yes.
Okay, so that we don't have conflict there.
Yeah. And even Hillary Clinton has said when the Jews were forced out in 2005, they left behind an incredible economy.
Right.
That area of Gaza was in great shape. They had started businesses, but they were thrown out.
Right.
With the blessing of the Israeli government, they moved them out and said, and Israel said, here's Gaza. It's all yours.
Right. Right.
But what happened? Hamas takes over.
Right. And they started firing rockets.
And here's the other thing we have to remind people, just like we have seen in other venues, you have the leadership on the West Bank. You have the leadership of Gaza. They're multimillionaires. They get rich.
Right.
They get rich, and they keep their people poor and angry.
Right. And also, if the Arab world really wanted to solve this situation, short of annihilating Jews and Israel, that being their objective, they would simply take these people in. They would take them. You got all kind of land in Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, and the Jordanians. Yes, it would be a humanitarian crisis, so to speak. But with all the oil money in the Arab world, easily they could fund this and take and have new settlements for these people. in basically the same type of terrain. Gaza, Egypt, or especially Saudi Arabia. Look at the map of Saudi Arabia. You know, they got they got a few population hotspots, and that's it. The rest of it's just desert. Well, that's basically what these folks live in now. They do have the Mediterranean Sea, you know, to enjoy and to take advantage of. But I'm just saying, you could find places for these folks to go if you wanted to have a new homeland for them,
right,
so to speak. But anyway, we will watch and see as we go forward here. But the hostages, they've only released maybe a quarter of them.
But yeah, I would say now about 4 dozen.
Listen, the bottom line is when you cut through all the language and arguments and stuff, these are secular. Well, not all of them. Some of them are Islamic, but the ones in the West who are promoting Islam, the Palestinian cause over the Jews, to hate the Jews, they hate Christians. They hate the West. They hate the Bible. They hate democracy. They are. They hate our way of life. They hate the Constitution. These people. They want to destroy Western civilization, basically, and they're not.
They've always wanted that. That's what the Muslims tried to do by conquest.
But you have a partnership between the Muslims, the devout ones who want to see the caliphate
right
worldwide, and you have these cultural Marxists who are basically, many of them, atheists, who hate Christianity and the West for a different reason.
Yes.
But they're the enemy of my enemy is my friend, so to speak. So they're kind of joining together to go after the United States, to go after Israel, and to a larger extent to go after Western civilization. They want to,
and I guess they figure they'll fight over what remains when Western civilization is destroyed.
Yeah.
Then they fight. I guess that's the way they think of it.
Listen,
but these cultural Marxists,
the LGBTQ cause is non-existent in Gaza.
Right.
Okay, so these people who are saying they are LGBTQ against Israel, Israel is a Western society and is very liberal, by the way, in many cultural ways,
right,
like America. They're the ones who are accepting of the LGBT
right
cause and let them have their freedom to express themselves. That's non-existent in the Muslim world.
Right.
So it's odd to see somebody who says, I'm trans and I'm for the Palestinians. I'm going like, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
They just know, hey, they hate America. I hate America.
Yes.
That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Just a confirmation they've extended the ceasefire for another 2 days.
You just got that news?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Israel making this announcement?
Yeah. To your point, I know we have to move on. There's a saying in the Arab world, first we go after the Saturday people, then we go after the Sunday people.
I've never heard that. Is that right?
Yeah.
First we go after the Jews,
well,
then we go after the Christians.
Look what Iran says. We're the great Satan and the little Satan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Little Satan being Israel, the great Satan being the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, you're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Next topic, Fred.
All right. Well, go back 2-3 years or so when we were in the midst of the pandemic. Great pressure to take the shot.
In the midst of what?
The pandemic. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. My bad.
Yeah.
I had a memory lapse there for just a minute.
Well, civilians had the right to refuse, as some of us
did.
Yeah.
Well, some of them had to choose between their job.
Yeah.
Yes.
You mean to get the shot?
To get the
COVID shot. Okay.
In the military, no way, no choice. We're going to throw you out
if you don't
get it.
If you don't get it, you're not a good patriot, and you're disobeying orders. We want you to take this shot, even though it's experimental. We don't know for sure what's going to happen, but we want you to take this shot. Move the clock forward a little bit. They're having real problems with recruitment.
Oh yeah, our military's in trouble
Yes.
because of lack of recruiting.
Yeah. The Army especially. Well, guess what? Last week it was announced, the military leaders, hey guys, you group, we threw you out. Would you please come back? I tell you what.
I wish we could play a Kamala Harris cackle right now.
Yeah, that's where it needs to
Appropriate
be.
response.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody, Ed, on a Monday morning. But anyway,
Senator Eric Schmidt, Republican senator from Missouri, he says, okay, let's have a chat about this. Cut number 5.
These are men and women who volunteered to serve our country. They built careers. These are our heroes. And they were just, dismissed and disrespected with this COVID tyranny that swept the political class in Washington. So they were gone, about 8,000 of them, Brian. And so as we face these readiness challenges with, an adversary like China, we have recruiting problems. The idea that we just simply dismissed 8,000 people, haven't done anything to bring them back. And when we bring them back, by the way, if they want to come back, they need to be fully restored with back pay, full rank, and an apology from Secretary Austin.
Yeah, I was talking to a military friend on the weekend. He said exactly the same thing. These people, if they were thrown out on a dishonorable, that needs to be removed.
Right.
They need full back pay, at least 2 years from the time that they were thrown out. They need not only their rank back, but they should be given a promotion. They should negotiate deals in order to come back.
The only problem I have with thinking that these brave men and women who were unmercifully kicked out, the only problem I have with thinking that they might go back is because the military's still in the grip of this woke insanity.
Oh, I know.
So it's not quite out of the frying pan back into the fire, but there'd be a lot. I think that they have done permanent damage to the image of the military, not just with the all the controversies over COVID, but
all
also
the woke garbage.
All the woke garbage. You had generational support for the U.S. military in this country.
Yes.
Families that had members of the military.
Yes.
These are people who would, yes, someone in our family is going to serve in the military, and we believe in it. You've done damage to your reputation, and that's not going to be repaired by welcoming back 8,000 people. I think there's going to be a lot of people. I think they're going to continue to lose people who don't want to enlist.
Yeah, they're just not going to enlist. To your point, we've had this discussion before. The military drew a lot from conservative America.
Right.
We're talking about the Bible Belt.
Oh, yeah.
Generational, like great-grandfather, grandfather, dad, mom. And so families, just because it was an honorable thing to do.
Yes.
And it's still honorable to be part of the military. It is the leadership that is destroying the environment.
Right.
In particular, this White House.
And in this case, what we're talking about here is now the Army, the Army at least, is recognizing they have a real problem with their recruiting. They can't keep their numbers up, which is going to hurt us across the board in terms of readiness and so forth. And they're saying we won't. Now, are they going to give? So this is what's yet to be negotiated or settled or talked about. Is okay. The military is saying come back.
Yes.
Those we ran off for not getting the experimental COVID shot. We want you back.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to have to say more than we want you back. They're going to have to say, to me, they're going to have to say, and here's your back pay. And we're sorry.
Yes.
We ran you off.
Yes.
And it won't happen again.
And it won't happen again. That's what they deserve. And I hope is this what the senator from Missouri is saying?
It's exactly
what's his name?
Senator Eric Schmidt.
Good for him.
Let me say one other thing, too, about the military. Now, I've never served, okay? So this is just as an outsider observing. Our military is not like the military we had in World War II and the Korean War and Vietnam, all right, where you can just start bringing people in, whether volunteers or through the draft, and you train them for whatever 6 to 8 weeks how to use a rifle and how to, some field tactics. We have a very high-tech military.
Right.
All right. You cannot afford the kind of brain drain that we had when we kicked out 8,000. You don't just bring people back and you don't just increase recruits and teach them how to use a rifle and how to maneuver on the battlefield. They are using we're soon going to be using laser technology, to shoot down missiles. Everything's high tech. It's kind of like having people on staff in a corporation who are using computer technology and using AI. You don't just simply plug a college graduate in and say, here you go, run this.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So we have degraded our military capability through foolish actions like what we have done, and we may have long-term consequences for that.
And you can blame the Democrats and the liberals for that, and some Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so what you got here, and our military is not going to, and they shouldn't say out loud what our weaknesses are.
Right.
Because like you're saying, Ed, what if you had a key person or persons at a strategic link in the chain of command, and they know how these operating systems work to deploy missiles?
Right.
And they're gone. And you're trying to train somebody else. I don't know. I'm not like you. I haven't been in the military, but you have to train people. They have to be in training to take over when somebody else does leave the military.
And experience counts in terms of this operation.
Right. So, again, I go back to it was an experimental shot. It was the COVID shot was an experimental shot. We never, ever should have kicked people out of the military because they didn't want to get it. And people never should have lost their jobs. I talk to people in civilian life I'm talking about, lost their jobs.
Nurses.
And hospitals are suffering.
Yes.
You've got hospitals who have to keep entire wings or entire floors basically unoccupied because they don't have the qualified people to run it.
And the shots, we've talked about this ad nauseum, I know, but it's been a while. The shots were did not stop the spread of the COVID virus.
No.
So the only logical argument you could get that I would say, well, you have a point there, would be to tell me you get the shot, you can't spread COVID.
Right.
And that helps save the lives of people, of other people. If you want to make that argument to me, I'll listen to it, and I will concede that there are other shots that have been taken, vaccines in our country's history that still in existence today for infants and babies that do precisely that. They keep you from getting something and or they keep you from spreading something, right?
Right.
When it was learned that the COVID experimental shot did neither, that's the point. You give it up.
Right.
You say, listen, we thought that this vaccine was going to stop people from getting it and stop people from spreading it, but it doesn't. Therefore, we rescind our orders that people be compelled to take it.
Yeah.
Right.
That would have been the logical, fair thing to do. And in this case, back to our original story here with the military needs to say, y'all come back. We're sorry we fired you. And here's your back pay. And we want you back on the job. Yeah. Now, it's been 2 or 3 years now, so I don't know how that logistically works. How do you plug people back into where they were? I mean, I don't know how that works.
And sometimes there's just you break a piece of pottery, there's no putting it back together.
Yes.
And so for some of these people, the bad taste that's in their mouth still means they're going to go, forget it. You can't give me enough money to go back, especially since you got all that woke garbage going on.
Right. I know.
I'm not coming back.
I know. The idea of terminating servicemen and women over that, what we just described, was ridiculous. It was about bow the knee.
Yes.
You will bow the knee to Caesar, which in this case Caesar is the federal government.
Right.
And that's what many of the liberals wanted to happen, and it happened, and we're suffering because of it. We'll be back.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
All God asks of you is faithfulness. Headlines in USA Today, did you see it this morning? All the odds are against us. Faithfulness is the word.
There's a place for you on the battle line. Engage in the fight for America's families. Visit AFA.net and then take your position. A message from the American Family Association.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. An agreement has been reached to extend the Israel-Hamas truce for another 2 days. That's according to a spokesman for Qatar's foreign ministry. Qatar and Egypt have been serving as mediators in the ongoing conflicts between Israel and Hamas. President Biden's newly created Supply Chain Council meets for the first time today. Fox's Jared Halpern has more from the White House.
White House National Economic Council Chair Lael Brainerd and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan are leading the Supply Chain Resilience Council and announcing more than 24 steps the administration is taking to improve the production and shipment of goods. Those steps include relying on the Defense Production Act to have Health and Human Services invest in the domestic manufacturing of medicines needed for national security. President Biden formed the new agency after breaks in the supply chain surged inflation and consumer prices in the aftermath of the coronavirus pandemic. Concerns over inflation continue to drag down the president's approval ratings.
Court papers say Facebook's parent company designed its platforms to purposely hook kids. That's according to new reports in this story from Fox's Tanya J. Powers.
The newly unsealed legal complaint brought by the attorneys general of 33 states against Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, accuses it of exploiting the behavior of kids. The redacted documents were described in reporting by the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. The complaint says Meta received more than 1 million reports of Instagram users under 13 years old since early 2019, but that it only disabled a fraction of the accounts. Meta could face civil penalties that could reach the hundreds of millions of dollars if it's found in violation of a federal children's privacy law. In a weekend statement, Meta says the complaint mischaracterizes the company's work.
We're hearing a lot about artificial intelligence these days, from the benefits to the dangers. AFN's Robert Thornton looks at how it's used in weather forecasting and why it's not new to the weather world.
Whether you get your weather forecast from your smartphone, NOAA weather radio, local radio, or TV meteorologist, AI has a hand in it. Well-known Alabama TV meteorologist James Spann is the chief meteorologist at ABC 3340 in Birmingham.
Goodness, we've used what I consider to be artificial intelligence for decades in weather, computer models. That's all that is. That is artificial intelligence. You are running a model of the Earth's atmosphere on a supercomputer, and they take all this data and assemble it, and they come out with the state of the atmosphere in 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 days.
He believes weather forecast models are an example of the ultimate use of AI.
And it's made weather forecast a whole lot better. And we're better at identifying, weather systems that can be dangerous, that could kill you days in advance.
Spann says the lack of data for the weather forecast models is a hindrance to a better forecast.
We're launching balloons twice a day, and think about all the things that can happen in 12 hours in the upper atmosphere. Until we can find a way of getting real-time monitoring of the entire tropopause, up to the tropopause, the troposphere, we're going to miss it from time to time.
Despite AI's usefulness, he says you still need a human in the equation.
AI tornado warnings, that they could be issued, sure, but you can have a person generated with perfect body, perfect skin, perfect language, but they've not been in the Dollar General in Gordo, Alabama. They don't know the culture.
I'm Robert Thornton.
Consumers are scouring the internet for online deals as they begin to cap off the 5-day post-Thanksgiving shopping bonanza with a day known as Cyber Monday. Even though e-commerce is now part and parcel of our everyday lives, Cyber Monday, a term coined back in 2005 by the National Retail Federation, continues to be the biggest online shopping day of the year. Adobe Analytics expects consumers to spend between $12 billion and $12.4 billion today, making it the biggest online shopping day of all time. That is American Family News for this hour. For more news and information, visit our website, afn.net. That's afn.net. Be sure to subscribe to our free daily email news briefs, like us on Facebook, and follow us on X. Thanks for listening.
The Bachelor of Arts in Christian Ministry at Wesley Biblical Seminary is the perfect opportunity to prepare for God's calling on your life. It's easy to make excuses why you can't pursue what God has called you to do, but this program removes those barriers, flexible class options, an affordable cost, and highly trusted professors. WBS is the school for you, and now is the time to take a next step and prepare for God's calling on your life. Learn more at wbs.edu. That's wbs.edu.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Battagliano. Joining us now is Steve Paisley-Jordahl. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Did you have a good weekend?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, it was great. We spent the Thanksgiving with Heather's folks, and I'm required by my marital vows to say roll tide.
Oh, man.
Ooh, you just separated yourself from a lot of people out there.
Again, it's not my heart.
You married into the family.
It's the law.
Listen, I was watching that football game.
You're talking about Alabama Auburn.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Iron Bowl. And I really like college football. I'll watch.
Doesn't have to be your team.
No, I'll watch anybody play college football. I just love the spirit and the competition, and I grew up with it. So Thanksgiving weekend is it doesn't get any better than that as far as the college football rivalries.
Yeah.
So I watched the Ohio State Michigan.
That was a good game.
Yes, which Michigan pulled off that rivalry game. That was a great college football game. And then the Iron Bowl was Alabama Auburn.
Yes, sir.
And that's generally a pretty close game, and they've had a lot of crazy things happen in that rivalry. However, I was watching that game Saturday.
Yep.
And Auburn was they had to be a double-digit
underdog.
I mean, they really shouldn't have been on the field.
I wonder.
With Alabama,
Yeah.
if you compare the seasons that they've had. But yet here we are in a rivalry game on the plains, as they call it in South Alabama, and you have Auburn winning. Auburn was leading the whole game.
Auburn was a 2-touchdown favorite, 13.5 points.
You mean underdog?
I'm sorry, Alabama was. Yeah.
Okay, I knew it had to be double digits.
Yeah.
And Auburn leads the whole game. And then Alabama scores on a Hail Mary. Literally a Hail
31.
Mary.
4th and 31.
4th and 31 with time running out.
Well, 2 minutes. There's a little less than 2 minutes to go.
No.
Yeah, because Auburn got the ball back, and
There wasn't 2 minutes. It was under a minute, I think. But anyway, we can check that. But anyway, the point was that all those people who there's two camps of people in America. Those who think Alabama is blessed by God, or God's team,
right?
And those who think that Nick Saban, his real name is Nick Satan. That's because
you could pretty much divide the world into two camps.
Good authority that man has sold his soul to the devil.
The devil went down to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah,
old brother War Arthur.
But you know what? I had no dog in the hunt, as they say.
Right.
I'm not a fan of either school. I appreciate both schools, Auburn and Alabama, for their pageant.
And so does American Family Radio.
That's right. We don't care which team you cheer for, as long as you write us checks. We don't care. But I didn't have a dog in the hunt. I just enjoy watching that rivalry. But man, as much as Alabama fans were elated to win that game in a miraculous fashion, some would say undeserving.
Or some would say it was devilry. Voodoo.
To watch the camera, the pain and agony and shock on the faces of those Auburn fans.
Because it was at Auburn.
I almost had to turn away from the TV set because you had all these little co-eds.
The pain and
with
suffering.
mascara running down their faces. And I don't know, they were probably getting ready to storm the field because it would have been the biggest upset in college football this season.
Yeah.
Had Auburn beat Alabama, and here they had it in their grasp, and you would think, what are the chances of making that play? I'm guessing that's 1 in 50.
I think the odds are probably
higher,
even higher.
The ESPN's analytics, the computer had it at 99.9% at the
Auburn was going to win.
Auburn was going to win.
Do you remember several years ago when Auburn beat Alabama on a missed field goal try? Alabama was and they ran it back for a touchdown.
Yeah, the kick six or whatever they call
it. This would have matched that in terms of
the drama.
Well, I'm just saying in terms of it being an iconic game that they'll remember forever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Auburn fans they're going to remember that forever.
They called in sick today. Auburn fans.
Like I said, I don't have a dog in the hunt, but I did feel bad for those fans because they were it would almost been better if you'd lost 49-0.
Yes.
If you
lose like that.
If you lose 49-0,
about the middle of the second quarter, it's
yeah, psychologically you can handle that.
In the second quarter, you're eating nachos and getting an extra.
You're saying, "Oh well, we knew we was going to lose anyway." But to be winning the whole game and then lose the very last play of the game against your arch rival on your home field.
I just want to say, after what Steve said, folks, you do hear that little announcement we make on our programming that the views expressed on
do not
this
necessarily
program
reflect
do
those
not necessarily reflect the views
Anyway,
of American Family Radio. So.
Anyway, so Steve married into an Alabama family, Alabama Roll Tide family, and they were celebrating on Saturday.
Being a good husband.
Yeah. All right. What do you got, Steve?
Well, I wanted to pay off on something. We were talking. You were very kind enough to ask me about the Christmas concert that our choral group did, Columbus Choral Society.
Yes.
And I promised you I'd bring a little snippet. So I'm going to play you. This is about little over 2 minutes. I got 4 songs that I condensed down in a little bit so you can get a sense of different types of song we did. Let's go ahead and haircut time.
Right.
Wow, that's that. I will admit that is high quality stuff. we were joking around before Thanksgiving week,
we could
talking about the difference between a church choir and a choral group in terms of, you
the type
pretty
of
much
music and quality.
Yeah, because now there are some outstanding choirs, but that was good stuff, Steve. Very
Thank you.
impressive.
Appreciate you letting me do that.
And now that wasn't specifically Christmas music, was it?
No,
okay.
It was a fall. It was no, it was.
I will say I started listening to Christmas music before Thanksgiving.
A lot of people are doing that. I don't.
Yeah, I just kind of thought, you know what? I just feel like listening to some Christmas music, and so I've gotten into it early.
There you go.
So,
all right. So, are you guys familiar with the diagnosis, the psychological diagnosis of Munchausen by proxy? This is a little bit of a archaic term, but basically,
I've had that ever since I saw Wizard of Oz, and I saw the flying monkeys.
Munchausen by proxy. That's right.
I am familiar with that. Yeah,
but
explain it to our listeners.
There are medications for that, though.
Is when a parent, usually a mom, this happens mostly with two women, make their child sick or pretend that their child is sick so that the mom can get attention.
Right.
That she's needed. And
that's illegal in most states, isn't it? I mean, you can be prosecuted for.
It's also known as medical child abuse or factitious disorder. But now they've coined another term. It's not yet in the DSM. It might not make it to the DSM, which is
explain it. The
DSM is the Diagnostical Statistical Manual, which psychologists use when it gives a code to every psychological.
These are recognized.
Diagnosis. So when somebody has
diagnoses,
when somebody has schizophrenia, there's a code, and that way, it's a unified definition of what that condition is. Well, Transhausen by proxy is what they're calling this. Unlike Munchausen, this is when parents decide that they are going to make their kids or that they have transgender children by the bushelful. I mean, there's parents who have 2- and 3-year-old transgender kids, or 4 of their 5 kids are transgender. What are the odds?
Right.
That's what they say. You say when you have a vegetarian dog, it wasn't the dog's idea.
Right.
So
now it's in pop culture, especially with the Hollywood elites and the actors and actresses and that world, that's trendy right now.
Cher, Sade, Jennifer Lopez, Charlize Theron.
They all want to say, "I got a trans kid." So that's a feather in my hat.
Yes.
Okay.
You're so brave.
Applaud me.
Because you're applauding them. You're woke and you're...
Yeah, they want to be woke. They're proud of that. And so
now this is not, and I don't know that it would ever be entered into the DSM because...
Probably not by that name, but yeah.
Yeah, but to me, I think this is spot on. That's going on. That there are parents, and especially moms, not just limited to moms, but that there are parents who get gratification by having trans kids, and the problem is that statistically speaking, most kids who are confused about their gender grow out of it.
Yeah.
And these parents may not be allowing their kids to grow
or
up.
I think they're introducing the confusion to them to begin with. In a related kind of phenomenon, we for a while we've been seeing what they're calling sudden onset transphobia or gender dysphoria.
Gender
basically.
dysphoria,
people who were normal, usually teenage girls, who all of a sudden, one girl comes out and says, "I'm transgender," and all of a sudden 7 others in the school do, and it's kind of,
the percentage explodes suddenly
for kind of the same reason. It gives the kids some kind of special status, and everything. But it's not just that the parents are confusing these kids, because this leads to the gender mutilation surgery. It leads to all of the drugs that they take to delay puberty. This damages children permanently.
Right.
And so I think it's worth noting. Bring that up.
Maybe that will become an official diagnosis at some point, but I think we're still in the stage where we're seeing this play out, and maybe psychology and psychiatry will catch up after 10 years. But there'll be a tremendous amount of damage done.
Oh yeah, and I think it's going to be the lawsuits as well that are going to kind of bring people around. You can't afford to be paying out millions of dollars to kids that you've ruined.
Right.
We've talked also for a while about the law enforcement problem we have in this country. The crime rates have skyrocketed in major cities: New York City, Chicago, L.A., San Francisco, Oakland. Oh, my gosh, they're having such a problem with crime there. And they have found out that over 2,500 New York City NYPD officers have turned in their badges so far in 2023. 7% of the force.
Wow.
Has
in
left,
1 year.
In 1 year has left.
And the year's not over.
No.
You'll probably get some who will just
by
call it quits after this year and say, I got my X number of years in.
A lot of cops are quitting before they reach 20 years, but for certain, a lot of cops who finally reach 20 years and full pension say, I'm done.
Yeah.
And we're hearing it. New York City has gotten so bad that they have canceled their next 3 entering classes into their police academy. They're not having entrance exams for 3 years because no one wants the job. And so no one's coming in to replace these cops. And these cops are working 10, 12, 15 hours a day.
All right, so let me ask you this.
Yes.
That last part you mentioned, the entrance exams.
Yes.
Does that mean they are just not screening candidates coming into the police academies, or they just aren't having police academy training?
They're not having police academy training.
Wow.
It doesn't mean that they won't take transfers from another department.
Okay.
A lot of these, I read in this article that a bunch of these cops have left NYPD for transit authority. So it's still kind of law enforcement, but it's not the NYPD. They're not facing.
That way they just get to watch people push folks on the subway tracks.
Right.
And get to arrest.
Yeah.
Well, you're not having to go into neighborhoods.
No.
All your work is limited to the transit system.
Yeah. And this is happening. They have the data for New York City, but it's happening everywhere.
Listen, street crime is only going to get worse in cities that do not punish the criminals.
Right.
That's just a law of nature.
Right.
And New York City, now there is a growing reaction to the non-punishment of violent criminals in New York, but I don't know if it's going to succeed or not, other than people leaving voting with their feet, so to speak, getting out of. We've had a lot of that.
Those that can afford to.
Yes, they can leave, but the city, these big cities are just, the crime is skyrocketing.
Yeah,
you're seeing open, brazen criminal activity, smash and grabs, where they go into these stores and just take what they want. Shoplifting is out of control. Big chains are leaving San Francisco, Philadelphia, New York, L.A. They're they're closing down their stores because they're losing so much money by shoplifting.
Now, let me ask you a question. What is a typical percentage of, let's say, New York City, where in any given year, you may not have that at the tip of your fingers here, but I'm wondering how 7.5% personnel loss compares to 1995.
I don't have it back that far, but this is the 4th highest number in the past decade, 43% more than the 1,750 who left in 2018 before the pandemic.
All right. Well,
and this is the other thing I'll tell you. The total number, they're saying the drastic cuts will reduce departments to just 29,000 cops by the end of the fiscal year 2025. That's 7,000 cops lost by 2025.
Wow.
And this is what they're saying. NYPD officers tell this person that's reporting they're afraid to make arrests because of the anti-cop climate in the Big Apple. And when they do make a caller, what's the point? We're shoveling against the tide because the bad guys go right back out on the street.
Oh, well, bingo. Until you get rid of the liberal district attorneys.
Yep.
Or I call them liberal communist.
Right.
District attorneys, those Soros-funded ones,
Yep.
for example. Until you get rid of those and you get law and order and punish the criminal, then it's only going to get worse here. And this goes back to what we were talking about last hour. these folks, by these folks, I mean these district attorneys and these liberal lawyers, and much of the Democrat Party, they view putting people in prison as a form of persecution against that person. It's a weird way of looking at the world, but they do. They'll take a crime committed by, let's say, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old black male, age, and I just said the age, okay, and especially if it's a person of color, or in this case, a black male, for example, they'll say, well, that guy doesn't deserve to be in prison because he's probably been a victim of racial discrimination by whites. So we're going to let him walk free.
Yeah.
Right.
In the name of fairness and justice. You see how that works?
Yeah.
That's what they believe.
Yeah.
And so you get that's why, this is my own view, and I don't have studies to back this up. That's why you remember that white Marine guy who saved the people on the subway?
Yes.
They went after him.
But they did.
With a vengeance because the guy died that he had in the chokehold. You remember that?
Right. Yes, I do.
Well, it was shown that this guy that died in the
chokehold,
who was an African American, was threatening people on the bus, and people were glad that this Marine stepped in to help calm the situation. Now, it's unfortunate that the guy died, but he did, and what they did was now they're prosecuting the Marine for the white guy.
Yeah.
For but if it had been a person of a different color, I'm saying they wouldn't have done that. They'd let him go. Now, you may say, well, that's reverse racism. What I don't know what you call it. I'm just telling you, this is how these cultural Marxists view the world. Predominantly, they talk about viewing things through a racial lens.
Right.
They view everything through a racial lens almost.
Well, what was the outcome, by the way, of that prosecution?
Is he still in prison, the Marine?
You mentioned. I thought, oh yeah, I wonder how that.
I want to say he's still. Look it up. I'm not sure, but I just know that with everybody being let go in New York City, and this guy who was trying to step in to help save people's lives, they felt threatened.
But remember the bodega owner in New York City as
same
well?
Thing.
Yeah, if that had not been public,
and he was an ethnic minority.
Yeah, if that had not been made public because of the viral video of the confrontation, they would have probably put that guy in prison.
Yeah, and what they're saying is there is an inordinate, how you want to say this, a inordinate percentage of a certain class of people in prison and jail. Therefore, we need to rectify that situation.
He pleaded. His name was Daniel Penny. He pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide.
Okay.
So he pleaded guilty. This particular article does not have his sentencing. It's from June. I'll see if I can find something. But yeah.
Well, anyway, if you know the story of that guy, he was trying to help. He didn't go on that subway train looking for a fight.
Right.
He stepped in because this guy, the video shows, and the testimony was that this guy was trying to keep people from being harmed.
Yep.
So he was trying to. As a last resort, he felt he needed to hold the guy.
Yeah.
Well, the guy died.
Yep.
He he got. I don't. But and he got convicted. So he pled guilty.
He pleaded guilty, and
there needs so we don't know sentence.
Yeah, but
but I'm just saying, if you want to know why there's so much recidivism, it's because these people view race as a factor, and though if you're a certain race, then you don't deserve to go to prison.
Brent just corrected me. He says he's seen articles where this guy pleaded not guilty. So maybe I misread that, but let me.
We'll try to update our listeners
by tomorrow.
Not guilty. Not guilty. I'm sorry. He pleaded not guilty. So he's got a trial coming up. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah, you're gonna have to sing for us then, Steve.
Okay. I'll play that clip again.
Okay.
Sing and dance.
Okay. All right. Have a great day, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association.